Dr. Dale Dugas is an acupuncture physician, Chinese herbalist, martial art master, and author. His interest in Asian medicine practices arose in his early teens and throughout the late 1980s while he was living in Iwate Prefecture in northern Japan. Dale is a much sought after brewer of Dit Da Jow, the transdermal herbal liniment used for pain and recovery, often associated with Kung Fu. Our discussion focused on recent deaths in the family, pain, his cancer, and the treatment thereof, Qigong and iron palm training, as well as a breakdown of his book, The Fundamental Iron Skills. His nature is unapologetic, his language colorful, and his demeanor engaging. Please enjoy this podcast with Dr. Dale Dugas. Welcome to the Transformations Podcast. Here, guests and I will share our transformative experiences and will explore how to find excellence in life.
How we doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I need to see you.
Yep, hold on.
In all your heavenly glory. There he is.
Right?
I know. Looking good.
Dude. It's been a while, brother, and I know we've both been going through a lot, so it's, I lost my aunt a little while ago. We didn't know, but my uncle, my godfather, my mom's oldest brother, she's got advanced dementia. She didn't tell anybody.
Oh boy.
She's taking him to he has a bad knee. She's taking him to an orthopedic doctor here in Sarasota. They were living in Venice. And she turned into an oncoming car going about 60, hit her, died instantly. Uncle, nothing happened. But then we find out he's got advanced Alzheimer's, so we put him in assisted living, and he just had emergency surgery. They took 6 feet of intestine out of him and gave him a colostomy bag because he's been an alcoholic and a hard drinker. He's one of those 5 martinis at lunch kind of guy. I never knew until my mom goes, "Oh yeah, your uncle, Jesus, my mom drinks wine. She doesn't drink hard stuff, but my uncle was a martini drinker."
Wow.
Anyway, now in his late 80s. So, it's just been dealing with all that kind of stuff and, moving and dealing with, everything that I'm dealing with. And dude, this thing was huge. And I've shrunk it. It's shrunk down to about the size of an avocado. But unfortunately, I've been to about 4 different surgeons, and they're like, "Kid, this is in and around all your vascularity, your innervation." He goes, "If we go in there and start scraping this off, we might kill you." And I'm going, "Hey, I don't give a shit as long as it's not cancerous, I don't care."
Right.
If it's going to be if it's going to be a pain in my neck for the rest of my life, who gives a shit? I just don't want to die from cancer.
Right.
So everybody's like, "Can't they?" I go, "Yeah, dude, it's grown into all those nooks and crannies." And of course, all the doctors are like, "So why do you think it happened there?" And I go, "Brother, do you understand how many times I've been hit here with either people, sticks, like in fights? I've been in real fights. I've had people chop me, I've had people throw me on my head, and my head violently cranked." And I'm going, "Yeah, probably it just got sick of all the attention." And, because you know what cancer is, it's just unchecked growth. But right now, it's not affecting anything seriously, but I got to find some new doctors down here because I moved. My old doctors are, 120 miles that way. So
Is it cancer or is it?
it was cancer. I had mixed carcinoma. They say it was a lymph node that went rogue. And dude, it wasn't even stage anything. It was just, what the hell is this lump in my neck? And then it blew up, and I went, "What the fuck?" So I talked to Robert, he goes, "This is my formula." I took the base cancer formula, put some other stuff in that are anti-cancer. I've been taking it. I've been taking other things. I did SEAC. Dude, look at me. I've dropped all this weight. I've been doing, people are like, "Dude, you look so lean." I go, "Oh, you have no idea. I've lost 180 pounds since last year."
Wow.
I was 440 pounds. I'm not 440 pounds, dude. I'm like 310 right now. So I'm a hell of a lot lighter. And fasting, like I do 24-hour fasting and then I eat. So I'm only having like 1 meal a day, but not really 1 meal, because if I feel hungry, I'll just eat, for 2 hours and then stop.
Right.
And then some days I don't eat, so I'll just, and then I'll have 2 or 3 days where I'm fasting. Dude, that resets the A1C totally. So this thing made me a type 2 diabetic, and I didn't know.
Right.
and I couldn't feel my legs one day.
Oh
Couldn't
shit.
feel my feet. I couldn't walk. And I'm like, what the fuck? And so anyway, I went to the hospital. Of course they do a blood draw and a blood sugar, and they're like, yeah, your blood sugar is about 800.
800,
What
dude.
the fuck? Why am I not dead? Oh, that's why my legs aren't working. Yeah, okay. So anyway,
Oh my God.
so this thing was pumping into my thyroid and doing something, and dude was not blood sugar was all over. And what am I gonna do? Wait a minute. No carbs. Took all the carbs out. I'm not a
Yeah.
big drinker. I'd have a cider here and there. No potatoes, no rice, no nothing, noodles, just carnivore. Do carnivore and fasting, and lots of magnesium and salt. In other words, I put salt in my water,
Well, yeah, you
but
need the
not crazy.
electrolytes. You need the
Yeah.
electrolytes. Yeah.
So, but a good like Redmond or Himalayan salt. So anyway, put that in, drink that, and dude, plus
Yeah.
all the Silat, dude. I broke down the other day talking to my teacher, William Sanders, because I'm like, dude, I don't think I'd be alive if it wasn't for you. Like this stiff back, stiff stuff
Oh
was
yeah.
killing me, dude. I couldn't do man. That's why I closed my hand for Mantis, dude. When I made a bridge, this would go right into my neck and I'd
Mhm.
fucking fall over, or I closed my eyes. I couldn't do it. So I'm like, I can't teach Mantis, bro. Like I can't do it. So I gave everything to all my friends who were doing it. I'm like Joshua Durham, he's training with Roger. I'm like, here you go. I realized, hey, what's funny is Silat fighting and swinging sticks doesn't bother this.
Right.
Even
Well, we
hitting a
never
stick
raise
is
the shoulders up and
that's
you
the
don't
thing.
compress them into your clavicle
Yeah, so
and
I'm not
into your
stiff
thoracic outlet.
because people go, "Oh, you're training stick fighting with who?" And I go, "You got to go look at him." And they go, "Wait a minute, huh?" And I go, "Yeah, he's not stiff, bro. When you see him move, he's even when you look at your teachers, they weren't stiff.
Right.
They were straight, but not straight because if they were straight here, they weren't straight with their footwork. They're doing
Right.
something. There's always some kind of
Hmm.
motion, coiling,
Yeah.
circling. Like when you taught me about the combat 100 you're like, hey, wait a minute. Don't think of those as pokes. Think of those as slashes. And I'm like, oh, okay.
That's where the linear becomes round,
Right.
circular.
So I poke you, or I'm
Avocados.
tinging, I'm
Hmm.
listening, tinging. So all of a sudden we're touching, and then, hey, hey. It's not just pokey pokey, it's pokey slashy, which you don't even see the poke if you just slash across. And I'm like, dude, mind blown. Right. But yeah, all that movement and just the freeing of the body and spine, dude, I can't do this straight, stiff qigong. That's great for people in the beginning to learn to quiet this and to let go of that residual tension. But once you do, dude, don't do this sitting, standing, not moving. You gotta, I'm more into the moving qigongs, and just our jurus, the way we move, dude. It's a qigong because we're pumping all this lymph.
Yeah.
You're activating the hands and feet, neurogenic as fuck. I'm alive because of this. I'm alive because of what I'm doing. And it's a process. And I'd never thought I'd be dealing with this, but I am. Okay.
But you have the tools to work with it. You've shrunk it by at least 50% that I can see.
It's that thing was people were like, what the I go, I did, yeah. And they're like, what the hell is that? I go, we don't know. It's mixed,
Right.
in other words, when they tested it, it's not one kind of carcinoma. Like me. I'm a typical New Englander. I'm English, Irish, Scottish, and Dutch, French, Canadian, Canadian, Indian. Yeah, hey, how you doing?
With Chinese and
So why would
Indonesian
I have
mixed
why
ones.
would I have a single type of no. We're gonna have the cancer like me. I'm mixed, I get mixed cancer. And people go, you're not supposed to make fun of it. I'm like, yo, bro, you haven't read a lot of the books on cancer treatment where people say laughter is really good.
Yeah.
Dr. Saul, whatever his name, I can't remember his last name, but he actually wrote a book, Laughter is Medicine, because he had cancer and he was a very,
You watched all the comedies and everything and laughed
I
at.
watched Monty Python on my
Yeah.
birthday. People say, what do you do on your birthday? I usually would take the day off from work and stay home, sleep in, and then I would watch Monty Python all day and just
Nice.
laugh my ass off looking at this stupid shit. No plot, just oh my god, toilet humor, which is the
Well,
best humor. My
just a
my
flesh wound. Just a
I
flesh
fart,
wound.
I fart in your general direct. Come on, dude, you're gonna have a straight face and that. Come on, jeez, it's interesting, everybody's like, how are you doing with all this? And I'm like, I'm okay, dude. Why? Because when the doctor sat me down and told me it was carcinoma, and I'm a medical practitioner, and I've been an EMT. I've worked in hospice. I've held people's hands while they transitioned. I had a partner die in my arms, dude. And people are like, "What?" I go, "Yeah." And I hope you never have to do that. But if you do it right. It's not
Yeah.
about you. It's about them. Oh,
All right. Let
I've
me
been
see
I've been
your
loving.
Peanuts Gang mug. Let me see the mug. Oh, happy together. See? That's
So
it.
my mother, God bless her, she's starting to lose her memory. Not dementia. I don't know. Right now, it's just memory loss. Like the other day, we're playing cribbage, and then last night we go and play cribbage, and my mom goes, "I don't know this game. What is it?" And me and my dad are like, "Shit!" She just 24 hours before we're playing, and now okay. Oh, it's cribbage, mom. And so okay, I'm just gently. I just keep saying things. And my dad dies. It drives my dad nuts. So I'm like, "Yo, dad, this is what we got to do. We just have to gently try to reinforce, and don't get mad. Because if you get mad, she gets mad, and then she's going to flip out and go violent. But it's better now. Why? I don't know. I took her to the doctor, and we put her on this medication that's kind of uh, memory, cognition. It's flooding her brain with a lot more blood. But it's very low dose. It's nothing bad. And so I'm like, okay, you know, but she won't take what I do. Uh, which is funny because my old man, he fell down and he hurt himself, and he had to go to physical therapy because he cranked his hand, so he had damaged soft tissue. So I said, "Huh, here, Dad, use my Dit Da Jow." The what? I go, my bruise medicine. He goes, "Oh." I go, "Come on." So I shook it up, put it out, put it on him. He called me that night, and he goes, "Can you bring me a bottle?" And I'm like, "Why, Dad? I thought you didn't like that. I thought you called it horse piss." He goes, "Yeah, the horse piss took the pain away, and I can move my hand again. Can you give me some?" Yes, I can. So my 88-year-old dad is finally tuning into Chinese medicine and the herbal medicine that you and I have been, using and practicing for a very long time. He's realized, hey, that stuff, the stuff, bug juice, bruise juice, hand medicine, Chicoine, Master Chicoine, one of my teachers who taught me a lot of my iron skills. He called it hand medicine. They didn't get into the Chinese terms. They didn't speak Chinese,
Right.
which is funny because he was gifted the International Shuai Association. Out of all the disciples, Chinese disciples, Master Chang goes, "I'm going to give it to the white guy. No Chinese." And people are like, "Why?" I go, "Yeah, you need to talk to Shifu Chicoine about that. Why? You just got to go. You'll know why he did."
Yeah.
Chicoine was the hip sing or the hop sing, which is funny because we all know that's a triad name, but
Right.
um, and then he got he it's funny how the story how he met Master Chang is funny because when I met Master Chicoine, he had a summer house in Gloucester, Mass. Because I said, "I want to train with you. Let me come out to Ohio." He said, "Where do you live?" I go, "Oh, I live in Massachusetts." He goes, "Oh, kid, you don't have to come out here." He goes, "I have a summer house." What? He goes, "Yeah." So he told me when he was going to be there. Okay, we set the date. I drive up to, I'm on the South Shore. So, I'm driving up to basically the northern part, almost into Maine. It's on the water. It's beautiful, very expensive. It's like the Cape, but it's the North Shore.
Hmm.
So his house is on this hill, and he's got these stairs, man. You're talking like a 35, 40-degree incline. You have to use the railing. I mean, even as a kid, I was young, I was 20 something. Oh, oh, Jesus, holy crap. I'm like almost 30, and it's like, man, these stairs are crazy. Knock on the door. I'm not going to knock twice. The door opens, and he's there. And now he's about 6'1". He's got this grayish white, dude, he had hair. It was like wavy, raw. And he's like, "Hey," I go, "See Fish Coin. It's a pleasure." He goes, "I'm going to ask you a question." I said, "Okay." He goes, "If I don't like your attitude, I'm going to pick you up and throw you down the fucking stairs. What do you think of that?" I said, "Well, your house, your rule, sir." He went, "Good answer." And he opened the door, and he grabbed me and he pulls me in the house. He's that kind of a guy. He's just very, ah. And that day we were doing iron palm training. And I asked him, I said, "How did you meet Master Chang?" He says, "Here, let's drink some tea." He goes, "You're going to love this story." So we're sitting down drinking tea, not in the peanuts cup. He says, I went to Taiwan because I met Tony Yang in Ohio many years ago. And he saw Tony Yang kick the ever loving poop out of a couple guys with his baji. Chicoine had been training with Fimanong, like a trolley foot kind of Southern Hungar mixed, kind of stuff. And so Chicoine looks at that and goes, whoa, whoa. And Tony goes, well, if you want to train, if you want the real deal, like my teacher's in Taiwan. And because Chicoine, he's not interested in wading in the creek. He wants to go swim in the ocean. In other words, he wants to go to the source. So he goes over and he meets Li Yun Chao. Li Yun Chao was the Baji master at the time. He was still alive. So this is like 77, 76, 77, 78. And Sifu Roger Su was his translator. Now, Sifu Roger Su is one of Master Chang's disciples. He's one of his top students. Li Yun Chao tells Chicoine, hey, you want to train with me, white boy? This much money. Chicoine puts that much money. You know the drill. Boom, it's a test. Chicoine brought a lot of cash. Here you go. And Li Yun Chao went, thank you. Took the money. Blow. What? Blow. Blow, white boy. And Chicoine was like, no, if that's going to be the way it is, okay. And, he gets up and leaves. And Roger Shu goes back to Master Chang and goes, we got a problem. And, Master Chang goes, what are you talking about? Sifu goes, Li Yun Chao took this guy, this American's money, and he, told him to beat it. Master Chang hated Li Yun Chao because Li Yun Chao liked to talk, oh, I was James Bond, I was a spy. He was basically an analyst. He was a, desk. Chang was the one out in the trenches killing people with his bare hands, doing the nitty gritty stuff. So they had an animosity. Well, Chang, he goes, this is it. He goes down and tells Li Yun Chao, you either pay the man back or I'm going to kill you. I've had enough. We're going to get in the ring and I'm going to show everybody that you're full of crap and I don't care about your baji. I'm going to kill you. And Li Yun Chao gave the money back. And then Master Chang, okay, whatever. We're good. I'm not going to kill you. Bravado kind of. And then, of course, Master Chang feels bad and invites, Sifu Chicoine out for dinner, and they're talking. And he realizes they have the same birthday. They both hate the Japanese. Yada yada, and Master Chang said, "You want to train with me?" And Chicoine was like, "Are you kidding me? Does a bear poop in the woods?" Yeah, yeah. Because he realized, wait a minute, that guy was good, but there's something about this person. Okay. And then next thing you know, when he gets ill, Master Chang had throat cancer. When he got ill, it's funny, like Yip Man, anyway. He and Chicoine he became the last disciple of the old man. And then before he passed, Master Chang gifted him the International Shuaijiao Association. So of all the students, and dude, the ones that had been with him for since they were kids, nope, white boy, no Chinese. Why? Because Chang said his skill level is even better than these guys. And why? Because he had other training. So it's funny, dude. We've both done this. We've trained in different systems. The Silat I'm now training in, and these movements and these concepts have made my other material. And people, what are you talking about? They're like, how are you so smooth? You're this big fat guy. Mm-hmm. And how can I, oh, you're fast. Yeah, pretty fast for some, Santa looking dude. How are you? Because of this. I'm not lying. I go, it's this, guys. Why? I've only been doing this training for the last few years. I've been swinging sticks, integrated Eskrima, and I've been doing Silat. Now in Silat, we don't really, there's some stick stuff, but it's more blades. And we have these close-in blades. We call it blade in the body, body in the blade, where we're learning how to, it's not, though if I had a campeon, the long Filipino swords there, I might have to open it up a little wide because that thing's really, it's not a shorter blade. And it's also got a honking handle. So you can do two-handed work. Well, it's hard to do two-handed work tight versus if I got one hand free, preaching to the choir here. So for anybody listening in, please. People say, why do you train with these people? I go, because I watched them and I saw something and I realized I have a deficiency. I can't do what they can do. So there's a desire component. I'm interested, but at the same time, I understand, hey, wait a minute, I don't know sticks. I know how to get sticks, I know how to, if you've got a stick, yeah, I can take it away from you, but what if I want to stick you back? I was always told you need to learn from small people, women, small boned men. Why? Because if they can do something, they're not faking it. They're not muscling it because, again, 6'2", 300 plus pounds. Over the years, my teachers would look at me and go, what the hell do you want this for? You can just pick somebody up and break them. I go, but that's the desire component. I like this. Something talks, something speaking to me. I mean, why did I get into Chinese medicine? Well, first and foremost, I was a sick kid, whole kinds of allergies, yada, yada. You've heard the stories. Many of us got into acupuncture martial arts because we weren't healthy. And I remember the first time I had acupuncture when I was 10, and it was just amazing. Okay. And then, of course, you hear the stories, you're training. Oh, the medicine. I started in Weiqi as a kid, and we always heard the stories of the Weiqi Gusa. Gusa is, Kusa, meaning medicine. And years later, I found out they're talking about like, internal Dit Da Jow or Dit Da Wan or, trauma formulas. And it's funny how you only had a little bit of information. And then now it's like, holy Lord, we've got books. You've written books, a lot of books. Why? Because you've been exposed to all these concepts and material, and you said, hey, wait a minute. The best way for me to remember is not only to write it down, but it's to share it with people. And then we know that information is going to get disseminated out, through the multiverse or whatever you want to call it. I mean, what's a legacy? How many videotapes have you made? I mean, as a teacher, did you make, like, I know you have a course, you have an integrated stream course, but it's a streaming service. These are MP4s. Did you ever back in the day have a course or something where you had tapes and
No,
sold
but
it?
I would make tapes for my students, but I didn't make them commercially at the
But
time.
that
Just I
so again,
didn't have the technical ability to do it back then.
well, look at us, dude. We're
Right.
talking. I'm in Florida, and
Oh, totally.
you're up in the
Philly.
Northeast. You're up in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. So it's like we didn't
Yeah.
have this as kids.
Yeah.
If your teacher wanted to talk to his teacher, it was either a very expensive phone call or it was a letter that's going to take, you're going to wait a month to get a reply because, 2 weeks, 3 weeks there, 2, 3 weeks back. See, you and we understand waiting by the mailbox. Oh, not here yet, but it's coming, and then you get a letter from somebody. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
dude, Asian world of martial arts. Do you know how many times I'd be waiting for that catalog to arrive in the mail as a young teenager who was smitten with the martial arts? I mean, holy crap. It was Dolan Sports.
Yeah, Dolan Sports and Asian World.
So you had New Jersey and Philly for whatever reason, not New York. The New York martial arts supply stores were these, I mean, they were great to go to because they were full of all the weapons that we had never seen before. We're like, what the hell's that? And it was the cicada blade, it's that straight blade with like a sickle and then the hooks. You're like, what the heck is that thing? And I think I'd only seen it once on my friend Steve Ventura's wall when he was teaching, when he was before he moved to Miami. He's a Lama Pai instructor, Charlie Foot, and they had one of them on the wall of the school. And you see a picture and you see that thing, you're like, what the hell? It looks like a Klingon weapon. But then wait a minute, that's where they probably got the inspiration from this stuff, is looking at all these Asian hooked.
Yeah.
And then people say, well, do the Philippines have hooked? I'm like, yeah, I mean, they have a gununting. The Indonesians have what we call a beladao or a kuku macan, which is a blade that is curved and then it's sharpened on the inside. Very interesting. And then you've got the karambits, which is a small kind of claw. And then, of course, when you're a martial artist and you live by yourself, you just, you
get toys.
So this is a very heavy Bally song from TFW. Ron Cuz, great guy, great stuff. But when you think of Filipino people, think, oh yeah, Bally song. I'm like, really? I think of more bolo.
Yeah.
Why would you think of a knife? I'm thinking more like something with a little bit more length to it. Because again, I thought.
Well, you come from the martial arts side, right? When you ask other people, they think of it from the movie side. Big Trouble in Little China had Jeff Imada with the ballet song. It got big in the 80s, so.
And then you see these people do these tricks, and I'm like, That's like nunchucks, back in the
Right.
day where we were training Kobudo and we do our forms, it's
Right.
it's not really, it wasn't this. It was, get in position, wait, block, and then you brain the person, you brain them again, and then you wait, block, wait, whack, whack. And again, anybody who's interested in learning Okinawan Kobudo, you got to talk to our friend Russ Smith, Sensei Russ
Absolutely.
Smith. He is an incredible practitioner. He has incredible Kobudo. He has incredible Kung Fu. And I train with him and
Goju.
Eskrima down here in
Yeah.
Florida. So again, I am blessed with knowing Mark, with knowing Russ, with knowing incredible people in the martial arts, in the medical arts. It gets me teary eyed. What, dude? When I think about all the people I've been exposed to that I can talk to and call friends, what is that? That's a blessing. It's a
Well, let me
mitzvah.
let me tell you a funny story. We're all waiting for the Dolan Sports catalog and the Asian World catalog, right? Russ Smith too. We talk about it all the time. But in 1984, I got a job at Asian World, and I was 15, but you had to be 16. But they let me slide because I knew about all the books, all the arts, all the weapons, and I could talk about them all. So I became a good sales guy there. But
Right?
I knew, because I watched kung fu movies, that there had to be monkey boxing in the basement. On the 6th floor was the qigong master. You know, where else would they be hanging out but the martial arts supply store? I still haven't found them to this day because they're very good at hiding from the guaylo. But one day, but of course, Asian World back then was on Arch Street. Right before that, it was on Broad Street, but
Broad
Arch
Street. Right?
Street, and then it was on the edge of Chinatown. And then, of course, you would just all the guys cooking in the restaurants were kung fu masters. This is the shit that we pick up from the media, from television, and you want it to be true so bad because you want to meet the master who's the old chef who's pretending to fumble around and he can beat 20 guys. That's
Right? Right?
that's the inspiration when you're young. Robin Hood, same thing. Robin Hood, Excalibur, all the same kind of hero's journey and whatever. That's what gets you in. And then after that, why do you stay? I don't know. It's like Lyme disease. You can't get rid of it. It just
Luggage,
locks
you're
in.
gonna it's like Samsonite, it's
Right.
gonna last forever. People are like, what? Like, God, it's an old,
Right.
you see these young people, the different generations with different commercials, they don't know. And I go, look, I'm not gonna explain it to you. Don't worry. I mean, it just means it lasts forever.
Right.
No, it's just marketing,
Yeah.
but I could bet you could tell me stories about customers coming in, just you could see just the because it's like going into a candy store for somebody who's really a foodie. Like when somebody goes to the place where that's their thing, and you just see that sheer joy, and you're like, damn.
Yeah. It was fun for me meeting a lot of teachers who came in and they were buying uniforms and weapons and safety chops for their students.
I know
So I got
back.
to know a lot of teachers in arts I didn't know about in places I hadn't been, and that was real fun. Um, so
We didn't have a big store in Boston. I grew up in
right. But you had the
Havernack.
Silky Way, right?
So we had Silky Way, and there was another store in Cambridge that was very small. It was
Hmm.
more books, but you could get kung fu slippers, or we would have the
The
Bao
bounty
Ding,
balls. Yeah.
the chimey ones. Now, of course, I've got my solid 5-pound copper ones over there on my coffee table, because people are like, oh yeah, those are easy, and then I put them in their hand and they can't even hold them up, and I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. And then I'm spinning them. I'm not rubbing them. I spin them, like, I'm putting them out here, and people go, how do you get those hands? I go, let me show you. And then that really, yeah, I was taught my first exercise for grip training was this. And this isn't Mantis or anything. This is just Okinawan Kung Fu. My teacher said, just reach out and then pull him in. And, think. And he said, okay. He goes, I want you to think when you pull your fingers in, I want you to try to think you're pulling your fingers through solid concrete. So years later, which is funny, Silky Way, one day, I went to Silky Way, and they had a bulletin board where they would put up all the workshops and seminars. And see this, for anybody listening, Mark and I are old enough that we didn't have the internet when we were kids. We didn't have cell phones. Jesus, they don't understand it. That's why we hung out there, because that was the network. If you wanted to learn who was in town teaching or upcoming, it wasn't in the I mean, it was in the magazine sometimes, but a lot of those people didn't advertise in the magazines. They were, they put up somewhere. And so that dude, and that bulletin board was like, dude, it had to be like 6 feet, wide and about 10 feet long. And it'd be full of stuff. Everybody's class information, tournaments, workshops. Oh, dude, every art. I remember everybody
Yeah.
would put business cards. So that was so big because the teachers would put their business cards on here, like staples. And you couldn't take them, but you could, and people were, yeah, we couldn't take a picture of you. We didn't have it. So we'd have to get a pen and paper, and write down, and then we'd go find these people, call them, whatever. But they had there was an article, there was a notice, South Mantis workshop with Sifu Roger Hagen. And I'm like, I had just gotten back from Japan, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, seminars on South Mantis are like legs on snakes, really hard to find. And I actually took it because I'm like, I don't want anybody else there. I want private lessons. So I took it. Oh, dude, we used to do that. We used to take everybody's notices, and then we'd show up. There'd be 3 of us. We'd pay more money. We said, no, we'd pay more money. And then we'd have like private lessons without the public idiots. And people go, what? I go, yeah, dude, we were bad. Me and a couple friends, we were bad. I had a Hungar friend. I had a Taekwondo friend and me, and we'd all go to these different workshops. Because back then we weren't supposed to be cross-trained. You were not, your
Yeah.
teachers would you're not allowed to teach or show anybody anything. You're not supposed to train with anybody but us. Huh? But you train with 10 different people. Shut up. Okay. So but every now and then we go to these workshops, and who's at the workshop? Our teachers. Son of a bitch. And we get nabbed, we get nabbed. But you were there too. Oh yeah, okay. So we're even, okay? Shh, don't tell anybody. So we didn't tell anybody that that teacher had been at that workshop with that teacher, and just, oh dude, really? Yeah, So I went to the workshop, and of course, Mantis, that this is the first exercise. So I'm like, oh yeah. And at the time, Steve Hager was a little paranoid about people, because Mantis is still kind of, it's mobbed up. And that's the first place I ever met Sifu Donald Wong was at that workshop. He made an appearance. And then when I found out who he was, I tried to get him to teach me. And he was the one who told me, nah, you don't need this. He goes, you can just break people anyway. Why? It wasn't, he felt, for whatever reason, I'm not the student that's supposed to be there. But my friend Bill Lewitt, a few years later approached him, and next thing you know, Bill's been with him, and he's an inheritor. It's like, wonderful, dude. Why? That whole adage of, when the teacher's ready, the student will appear. And I don't mean the student, I mean the teacher. When the teacher's ready, like sometimes the teacher goes, nah, not you. Oh yeah, you. Why? Why did Chang give Chicoine the system? All these little things that seem to, speak to him.
So I see a big jar of Dit Da Jow on your counter back there between a teapot and coffee pots.
Okay, so
It's soaking still.
how do you train your grip? Now this isn't Dit
Okay.
Da Jow. So
Ah,
what this is my Cinecirc.
okay.
So getting back to, I call this Kevin. I call my tumor in my neck Kevin. It's a joke. Anyway, the dark half, people can't get it. So when this was giving me diabetic and blood sugar issues, and I was having this neuropathy, it wasn't in my hands, it was more in the feet. I said, wait a minute, I need to help maintain my blood sugar. I want to also think of, if I'm having neuropathy, I need circulation. I need to increase my systemic circulation. What do I have in my toolbox, which is acupuncture and, and Chinese herbal medicine? What do I have? Cinnamon, they've done research. It's really good for maintaining blood sugar levels, but it's also great for increasing circulation, especially when you use cinnamon twig. Now, I use also the cinnamon bark. So in Chinese, I'm going to throw some Chinese at you. Roguay. Roguay is the bark. Guija is the twig. And people go, wait a minute, cinnamon, what do they have? Yeah. Chinese, don't worry about it. Long story. We're not going to get into it. Linguistical nightmare. But Roguay and Guija. So I took some Roguay. A friend of mine had gifted me some imperial grade. Now, people talk about herbs. The stuff you can get at most Chinatown shops is kind of down here. It's not that good. No offense. Next, we have, from all the herb companies that we as practitioners buy from, there are Mayway, New Herbs, Camwo, Dr. Kang. There's a few suppliers, because we're buying wholesale. They're tested. We know that, if something happens, there's lot numbers, you can track it down. Anyway, done professionally, but taking the old, we're taking the old plant technologies and we're updating it with modern tech. Now, friend of mine, I gave him a gun safe because I was moving and I didn't have room for this huge gun safe. So I gave it to him, and he gifted me a huge piece of this imperial rogueway. Now, this is kind of what you see in the stores as what they call Vietnamese cinnamon, and it's like a huge piece, and it's usually, it's about an inch or more thick. Crazy. And when you open this stuff up, your whole area is going to smell like cinnamon for months. Again, not easy to get. So what I did is I took that imperial grade, took some cinnamon twig, took a few other herbs, one that's called Wei Ling Shan, clematis. Okay, why? Clematis is supposedly what they call a channel opener. So in theory, we're taught there's certain herbs that move and there's certain herbs that kind of make sure that they open all these doors. And we talk about doors, meaning every kind of joint is a door or a gate, and that we need to make sure that these gates are open so that the theory is they're talking about circulation, but they didn't understand the concept that we know now. This is, we're talking way back when people started figuring stuff out. They're like, wait a minute, we know something's moving, but again, we're always limited by our technology. Now we know not only do we have circulation, we have systemic circulation, macro and micro circulation in various organs and parts of our body. It's like, wow, dude, you can have circulation issues just in a finger, or just in, a hemisphere, or, really? Yeah, specific just there. You're having issues there. Okay, so we need to, so I made this. Why? Because I was having problems. And they wanted to put me on metformin. And I'm like, nope, I don't. Why? I don't want to start taking prescription drugs because then I become dependent on them. And again, this is a personal, not gonna, I'm not gonna shame anybody for wanting to use a prescription or anything. If it makes you better and gives you, incredible benefits, then great. But if it gives you just side effects and chaos and negativity, then wait a minute, you need to rethink. That's not working for you. But again, what do I have in my house? Because I have these things in my house. So put them in a jar, put alcohol in, let them sit for a period of time. Then I put these drops either in hot tea or hot coffee. You can put them in water, but be careful. This is high proof ethanol. This is about 153 proof. You don't want to be giving yourself, even though you're putting maybe a teaspoon in a cup, if you're not blowing up that ethanol, you just had a teaspoon of like basically moonshine. And that might affect you. So I always tell people, if you're gonna just use it in water the night before, put your tonic in the night before, leave it on the counter. And usually ethanol is so volatile by the next day, you've blown off any ethanol. And you're leaving that, you're leaving what we call the remnants. Because basically, we're talking chemistry now, guys, is we're taking this raw material and we're using a solvent. And the solvent we're using is a mix of ethanol and water. Basically, I like to use 100 proof vodka. Why? It's 50% water, 50% alcohol. Anybody who tells you you need to use 200 proof, which is 100% alcohol, is not speaking chemically correct. Some herbs do not dissolve in ethanol. They need water or some other, oils or whatever. And some herbs do not dissolve in water at all. You need to dissolve them in ethanol. So that's why you need a mix. Going pure alcohol is not going to make it any stronger. It's actually going to make it maybe, because I've had people take my herb kits. I sell herb kits, and they take the kit and they put it in something too strong. And then they use a pre-made version of mine. They go, how come yours is better? I go, because you're using only ethanol, because half those herbs don't dissolve in ethanol. So they're not gonna dissolve. In other words, they're inert. There's nothing happening. So chemistry coming into tincture making, decoction making, liniment. Now, what's the difference? Well, the difference is if you put it on your skin, we call it a liniment. And if you take it internally, we call it a tonic, or we call it a tincture. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy kind of stuff, potato. But so Cinesurc, really good for making sure that you're circulating. I do not have neuropathy anymore. I take this every day, just a few drops. Okay. Great for people with Menards or any kind of circulation issues, people that get cold hands. You can either take it internally or you can actually use it topically. Okay. Why? There's nothing in here that can't be put, transdermally. I didn't make it that strong. This is not a Dit Da Jow. My Dit Da Jows are, very, very strong compared to this. This is something that's, why? You're going to use this over a long time, so you don't make it as strong as, an injury liniment or a recovery liniment. And people say, what's the difference? Like, well, injury, you're going to have more pain killing herbs. Because people say, what's the difference? When we're talking about iron palm, talking about the books, and talking about iron palm training, here we go, because this kind of segues into that. People see this stuff and they say, oh, Dit Da Jow, because that was your first. Oh, look at the Dit Da Jow. Yes. It's a jar full of dark liquid with particulates,
Yeah.
Every now and then people would come over to my house in the past and I would have kidney tonic formulas with the gecko, with the gauge, and they'd see something and they'd shake it up, excuse me, and the head of the gecko would pop out and people would lose their mind. They'd see the head of the gecko and they'd lose their mind. And they're like, what's that? I go, oh, it's a gecko. They're like, why is it in there? I go, well, somebody figured out that gecko and the chemicals that are in it are good for the kidneys. They help, raise your base level of energy. And people go, what? Energy? I go, yeah, energy helps build blood. And the more blood you build, the more blood cells you build. And when you're breathing, that O2 that's in your body is going to pair with those blood cells and go everywhere and, keep you alive. And people kind of look, you've encountered this and I've encountered this. And sometimes I look at people and go, you slept through biology class, didn't you? These basic, these basic things that most people don't understand, that, yeah, you know that when you breathe, that oxygen bonds with your blood cells, and then, the blood cells travel and take oxygen throughout the body, and that makes sure that it doesn't die. What? Don't worry about it. The magical energy of the dragon of the universe comes down, but not mystical mumbo jumbo. Maybe if you look at herbs and think, oh, that's mystical or mumbo jumbo, but then what's in those herbs are actual chemicals that they figured out 2,000 years ago that I can know that now we know that cinnamon helps with blood sugar and circulation. So it's a win-win. Why? Maintain your blood sugar and make sure that the, circulation is happening. I think half the problems in the world are because circulation issues. And if we get back to people, we help them circulate everything. And there's another one over there. You can't really
I
see
see
it.
it. Yeah.
See, I use pickle jars. It's an old pickle
Nice.
jar. Why? Because if I
Nice
buy
and
the
big.
jar at the store, it costs $25 for the jar. But if I go to the store, I buy a $9. It's the same jar, but I pay $9. What? Why? Because they're buying them, in bulk, and then they're selling them. This is the 100 years longevity formula. Now, a lot of people start having energy issues as they age. I'm 56. I'm not getting any younger, but my energy levels are pretty good for somebody who's, dealing with all that they're dealing with, and again, I'm not 18 anymore. People say, how the hell do you not drink, monsters all day long or Red Bulls? And I'm like, oh Lord, none of that. Okay. What I use is something old school that has, different herbs. So this is the 100 years. There's herbs in here. There's dongwai. Dongwai is a blood builder. It's angelica. Now, angelica is really good for women. They call it women's ginseng, especially postpartum women. So women that have had children or have been through, like physical trauma, stress, or anything, when you want to help them recover faster, you want to make sure they're getting a lot of certain substances. And one of them is dongwai. And I tell them, make soup, make chicken soup, throw some dongwai in there, and what we call goji berries. There is goji in here. If you can see it, I don't know, but you can see the red little, they look like raisins.
Mm-hmm.
Now, goji, or what we call gojitsa, the goji is really good for building blood. And it's red. So they talk about red, certain colors. We're taught in Chinese medicine, like, blacks for the kidney, reds for blood, reds for the heart, reds for the liver, because you think of those muscle tissues. The kidneys are darker, so they assign it the color black. So if you look at this, It's really dark, really, and people go, how the hell do you get those dark? I go, the herbs in here, there's specific herbs. There's Romania root, which we call Dihuang. Now, I didn't put Shen Dihuang. Shen Dihuang is raw Romania. That'll make you poop, and that's more for Dit Da Jow. What I put in here is what we call processed Romania, okay? Or Jow, and why? Because the processed is more about building and tonifying. The raw version of an herb does something else. Now, this is where we get into some real nitpicky stuff when we're talking about Chinese medicine, because a lot of people talk about herbs. They say, oh, yeah, Dongwei's good. I go, well, okay, Dongwei's good, but how are you preparing it? How are you processing it? And this is where we get into a whole nother subsection of Chinese medicine that we call baojai or baozi, where it's all about how you process these herbs for optimal use. Raw Dongwei, you don't give anybody raw dongwei unless they're constipated. Why? It's so oily that it will help you, have a bowel movement. I was taught, don't ever use fresh angelica except if you're constipated. Why? It's like colon blow. It's so oily that it's gonna oil your intestines, and that oil's gonna come out of you. And so what we do is we either process it with either alcohol or vinegar, depending on what we want to do. If you want it to tonify, we kind of fry it in ethanol to break that cell wall down, to take those oils out. Why? Those oils are really good at, reducing, constipation, lubricating. We don't want to do that. We want it to break down and get the chemicals out of, we want that oil to get separated to break down the chemical that builds blood. Okay. Well, how do we do that? By frying it, like stir frying. I use a wok sometimes. I use a fry pan, and I'm heating it very hot, and I'm putting in ethanol to break it up. Now, some people will char their herbs. They don't use any alcohol. They get a really, really hot wok. They throw the herbs in, and they're basically stir frying it to break down that cell wall to get the active components out of that product. So these, I'm taking the herbs and soaking them in the ethanol, and then we're taking that ethanol, we're going to filter it out, and then you're going to either use it by putting it on your body or putting it in your body. But I process these herbs. So the dongwei was fried in alcohol. When I use a Dit Da Jow, we want dongwei, we actually don't use the body. Why? The body's tonified. We use the dongwei tail, which is called guiwei. And the tail is really blood moving. I usually fry them in vinegar. Why? Vinegar goes to the liver. It's going to activate the liver. It's going to activate circulation. So if you've got an injury, we think of there's stuff that's there that's not moving. The gate has been shut, and usually you have swelling, and the brain tells you, ow, something's wrong. We have this security system in our body. When we do things to it, our body responds. So it responds by sending all this neurological kind of soup to this area. Okay. The body's trying to figure out what's going on. Usually you get swelling, you get redness, you get heat. So we want to drain that heat, clear that heat, get rid of that swelling, and alleviate the pain. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have herbs that do those things. That's how we're taught. This herb drains. This herb does this. This herb's for pain. And when you're talking about pain in Chinese medicine, we have two herbs that we talk about. First one is called Yanhuso cordialis, and that is like Chinese aspirin, and it's used in a lot of formulas for pain. The other one is Sanqi. Sanqi is pseudo ginseng, and it's this little, cordialis usually is a tuber, and they cut it, and I get mine already processed, so it's a dark color, but usually it's like a gold kind of very aromatic kind of smelling herb, but very tiny, usually tiny pieces. Sanqi can be these big ping pong golf ball sized, and they're like rocks. And I remember the first time I got it as like a 12-year-old kid, I went to, here we go, Inside Kung Fu. And they had somebody wrote an article about Dit Da Jow, and they put the herbs in the Chinese. And I took that magazine to that herb shop in Boston, and here's this white kid, I'm going to get me. And the herbalist looks at me and goes, oh, Dit Da Jow, okay. And he put all the herbs. I think I paid $6 for it. This is big, it was a large amount of herbs. It's like 20 or 30 grams each, and it's about 14 or 15 herbs. So it was a pile. And they still use butcher paper in a lot of these herb stores. So they would put it in the middle of butcher paper, they fold it up, put rubber bands, and they put it in a bag, and you take it home. And I got home, and my dad goes, hey, show us the stuff. So I, put it down, I open it up, and it's on this big square of paper, and it was the most amazing looking thing. There was safflower, this reddish, these reddish flowers. There were these different pieces of wood, roots. And what was the craziest thing? And then the sanshi, he didn't break it up. He just gave me this one huge golf ball sized piece. And my dad's like, "What's that?" I go, "I don't know." And I picked it up and I'm like, and I'm like, I was knocking it on the table and I'm like, "Man, this thing's hard." My dad goes, "Well, I think you probably have to break it up, And I'm like, "Yeah, probably." And we try to figure out how to break it up. Finally, my dad wrapped it up in an old pair of jeans and he hit it with a hammer because I think he tried, and it, like with hitting it with a book, and it left a dent in the book. So, hit it with a hammer, wrapped in an old pair of jeans, break it up, and then put it in the solution. And we put the alcohol in, and I put it in my closet. And I left that Dit Da Jow, dude. That Dit Da Jow sat in there for about 10 years. And I went back. I went, lived in Japan, moved, and then I said, "Hey, Mom, remember this jar of stuff that I left in my closet like years ago?" And she's like, "Oh, that horrible panther piss." That's what my mom called it. And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I threw it out." It was probably like close to 20 years old. I'm thinking my mom threw out a 20-year-old Dit Da Jow that had been sitting
Right.
and
Steeping, getting righteous.
steeping. So of course we get into this whole thing where people talk about how long do you need to steep herbs. I said, okay, let's get into this and not the old wives' tales. People say you have to bury it. No, you don't have to. You don't have to. People would bury it because they would store it at a constant temperature over the time they were. We say fermenting, but it's not really fermenting when you're using alcohol. You're decocting, and you can if you want to. And I had teachers take barrels full of material and then put the jars in then and leave that there for like a year or two. Why? Because the energy, there's this. Why do you think they have something called grounding and earthing, where you go out and you take your shoes off and you put your feet on the ground? You need to go to the ocean and stick your feet in the sand, you know, and not during the day. I want you to do this at night. Why? Because you're too damn yang, dude. You gotta let go of this. The ocean is very yin, and I was always told never do qigong in front of an ocean, because the ocean, that's where we came from, and it wants you back. So I had a teacher that was very adamant, never do any energy work, training in front of the ocean. He goes, lakes and ponds, rivers, yeah, but not the ocean. Why? Because that's where we're from. That's the source. And I'm like, okay. Well, that's what he thought. But then again, we have other teachers who don't, they don't believe in evolution and whatever. And it's interesting,
Yeah.
because we were taught based on the teachers, what was their background, what was their, what was their ethnicity, what's their religious background. And people go, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Look, a lot of us train with different people who weren't Christian, who weren't, white people. We train with Asians. We train with, other people, today. When people come and see me as an acupuncturist. Now, I don't have a clinic. I'm doing concierge acupuncture. So I'm going to people's houses. I'm going to their offices, because I tell them I don't have to put you on a table naked under a sheet unless you want me to put you on a table naked under a sheet, if you get my drift. But that's also a whole liability when we think about clinic things. But no, it's easier. Why? Because I come to you at your schedule. I'm only going to need access from your elbows down and from your knees down. Why?
Yeah.
I'm like a lot of other people. We have figured out, and we've learned a system of acupuncture that comes from a man. Uh, we all call him Master Tung, and he was from Shandong province, which is funny because Shandong is very famous for northern mantis. But this man, he was from that area, and he came down through China into Taiwan, and he taught a lot of people this family system of acupuncture that is way different than anything we learned in school. What we learned in school is basically the spray and pray theory of, oh, if there's 50 points for that, you're going to put 50 needles in. Why? Because you really want a good, strong stimulation. Most Chinese acupuncture is very strong stimulating. Big needles, and when I say big needle, I mean thick needle, not. Some people are like, "Well, what if my whole arm hurts? Are you going to put a needle?" I'm like, "Well, I could." And they're like, "Really?" And I'm, yeah, the longest needle I ever had in my clinic were like 12-inch needles. And I think I've only used it once, where I had somebody with a leg injury. I put it at gallbladder 34, which is right beside the knee, and I threaded it all the way down to their ankle, because their tibialis anterior had been, somebody hit it was a soccer player, a professional soccer player, and somebody had kicked him, like, and totally knocked him down, and his gastroc was just hugely swelled in the back, but then the tibialis anterior in the front, it was off the shin bone. It was really painful. And so I thought, you know what, dude, you want to try this? And I, put it in and moved it. I put electro on it, and 30 minutes later, the swelling was gone. And this guy got up and he goes, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "No, why didn't you come to me before?" We always, I say we, but acupuncturists and other practitioners, we usually see these people way after, like sometimes they've gone to doctors and they haven't had any relief, or they've only had 50%. They still have these lingering issues. And I say, "Why didn't you come?" I've had people carried in. I've had people carried into clinics I worked at, and they walked out and they're like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, why didn't you come to us first?" "I didn't know you could do this." I'm like, "Well, that's why you know, should have called."
Well, it's
I've
it's
done,
a problem with the education, right? And the marketing and the branding of what TCM can do and not do. And of course, Western medicine has, they've got the lock on all of it. And
again, big pharma, and everybody goes, "Oh, you're totally again." I'm like, "No, I'm not totally okay. If you have cancer, I have cancer, guys. But I found out I'm allergic to chemo a long time ago. I was an EMT and I got exposed to something, and I had to have a prophylactic medication. It was, one of those injector pens. And I had a bad response to it. And the only thing they could figure out on the ingredient list that, was platinum. Because, this is like when you have like biological warfare happen, and this is the stuff that you take so you don't die. And had a bad reaction to it. Found out, so I'm okay. And then I had a test, and guess what? I found out I am allergic to platinum. And so when I went to doctors, I said, "Look, I can't have platinum-based chemo." And you and I both know platinum-based chemo is pretty much almost all of chemo is platinum-based. It's heavy metal based, whether platinum or other metals that attach to these cells and break open. Basically, these heavy metals attack and break open these cells, and then the cells are basically, they're either eaten by the T cells, or they're dead, and you have to just excrete them, sweating, peeing, and defecating.
well, or fasting, because that generates autophagy, which eats up
Yeah. So it's funny,
your
if you
dead
don't
cells.
eat, if you give your digestive and your alimentary canals a break, again, it resets your A01C. I'm finding I'm getting a healing response from not eating. And people go, "What do you mean not eating?" I go, "I'm not eating. Like, I'm not eating for sometimes 2 or 3 days if I feel like, I'm okay." "Well, what if you feel tired?" I go, "Well, yeah, I'll have some tea or coffee. And I'll have a little bit, sometimes I'll have a little bit of tonic, like, like a tonic formula, but I'm not eating solid food." Now, in the beginning, it can be tough. Why? It is a mental, people like to eat. It's a routine, and it tastes good, and it's totally Pavlov, reward here. Oh, it tastes good. Nom, 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 nom. So most people like to eat. Yeah, I think most people like to eat.
I
Some,
think so too.
hey, trust me, I love to eat.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, again, it's a problem with marketing and education. You're taught that you have to eat 3 times a day. That has to be balanced with carbohydrates and protein and vegetable of some kind. And you're taught, you
yeah. That
learn, not
remember that
thought that,
food pyramid? The food
oh, it's
pyramid that
all
came out in the
bullshit.
40s.
Yeah.
They actually got sued, and about what, 10 or 15 years ago, they had to and basically the food pyramid inverted,
Yeah.
because the scientific community is like, "That's not that, no, that is not right." And people say, "No, no, low fat, high carb." No, dude, that's diabetic. That's diabetes. You're going to give everybody diabetes on a diet like that. But high fat, good fats, of course, but high fat, high protein,
Yeah.
carnivore. Why is carnivore resetting people's diabetic, conditions? "Oh, that's bullshit." Uh-huh. I remember when back in the day, fish oil does this,
Right.
blood thinner, this. The government said, "You can't say that." And all of a sudden, the government's selling their own version of fish oil. Wait a minute. I thought, oh, it's just bullshit and we do it, but it's okay once you market it, license it, and you got your version that is probably full of crap. Aye, aye, aye.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, marketing, again, acupuncture. People think of acupuncture, they think of China. I'm like, well, there's other countries that practice acupuncture as well.
Yeah.
We've got the Korean hand acupuncture. We've got, Master Tung, which is Chinese, but when you look at it, people sometimes think it's Korean because we put needles in the fingers, the hands. I put needles in people's heads. I don't put anything on our torso anymore or on the back, unless I'm doing either a cupping training or I'm doing some kind of manual therapy. And if I got access, yeah, sure, I'll needle. But if I'm not doing those modalities, there's no need. You know, I use mostly we have it's kind of funny. You're gonna laugh, everybody, but in Chinese medicine we say women are always right. So I'm gonna treat more points on the right side of a woman. Why? Because this is the blood side of the body. The left side of the body is energy. So you got blood, you got energy. So men, we're going to treat men on the left side more so. This is how we're taught in Master Dung. So women, you put certain points in. There's 2 points called Lingu Da Bai, and it's right here after your index finger knuckle and right before that thumb. Okay, these 2 needles. This is like, you're always in Master Dung, you're always going to put these 2 needles in somebody. So for men, I put it in their left hand, and for women, I put it in their right hand. And then but again, I use up to maybe 8 to 10 needles. And people are like, really? I don't have to use 100. I mean, unless you have, say, a serious problem, say you had a stroke. Yeah, this is where I'll use more needles and probably use a lot of electro. I had a patient, we were treating vets here in Florida, in my area of Florida, until the VA decided we were helping too much and they removed the service. Other parts of Florida, you can still get acupuncture as a vet. So anybody out here who's a vet, contact your local VA. Because a lot of VAs, it is a paid service for the vets. You can get acupuncture treatment, sometimes up to 12 treatments, a month or in a few months period. I don't know. But again, anybody who's a vet, contact your local VA and see if they have acupuncture. Okay. So I was treating this man and he's a Vietnam vet and he had a stroke and he could not use his left arm. So that, whenever somebody has a affected side, we know in biology that they had the stroke on the opposite side. So I started treating this side. I put 2 needles in on the side of his head. I put 1 needle on top up here in the middle of the delt. I did right here by the edge of the elbow. And then of course I had Lingu Da Bai and I lit him up. I put an electrode on this and I put an electrode up on the head. And I said, tell me when you feel it. And he was like, I don't feel anything. And then he goes, his left index finger started moving. He didn't feel it. But he goes, what does that mean? I go, brother, that means that nerve is working and that the stimulation I'm putting through those needles is affecting that. And he started to cry because he couldn't move shit. It was a dead arm. And here it is moving. Well, he comes in the next week and he goes, hey, look what I can do. And he started moving his fingers. And he, again, very emotional because he had a dead arm for 5 years. Within 3 treatments, he could move that arm again. And within 6 treatments, he was back to driving himself because he couldn't drive because he only had 1 arm. And he didn't want to, down here in Florida, people drive like cowboys and, it's cowboys on the highway. You got to be careful. So, even me, fully functional, I drive with both hands on my wheel around here because I tell people, oh, I'm on my way. I'll try not to get killed. Anyway, Florida driving. But he was ecstatic. He was like, are you kidding me? I said, no, dude, I'm working literally. I'm stimulating a nerve up here and I'm stimulating all the way down there. And for whatever reason, that stroke caused these things to just stop and close. Now we've reopened them. And it wasn't pain-free. Like he called me after the 4th treatment. He was like, my arm's on fire. We talked about this. I said, we knew that this was probably going to happen, that those nerves are waking up after being asleep for 5 years. So it's like pins and needles, it's like when you fall asleep funny and your arm or your leg's asleep or your butt falls. Yeah. You sit down so long, your butt falls asleep. And then you try to get up and, you've got this limb that's not working. And then when that circulation starts going back, first you feel the blood and you feel the heat. And then all of a sudden, depending on it can hurt or it can feel kind of like tingly, and again, this is how there's something moving in here. You feel it, but it's physically, that's just you noticing the physical circulation of the actual blood, lymph, and electrical, the neurotransmitters. And again, people give you the blank stare. All that stuff that moves when you breathe.
Let's talk a minute about your book, Fundamental Iron Skills.
Oh, please. So years ago, we talked and you said, you should write a book on the stuff you've learned. And I said, you know what? That's good because at the time, there wasn't any one book that had all of it. There were different people that kind of here's a good piece of, oh, that's gold, that's training gold. Oh, here's another nugget of gold, that's good. But it wasn't in one. And some of these books were in Chinese, or they're like, look, unless you can read original Chinese, because the English translations were horrible, and they didn't talk about the exercises correctly. They didn't talk, a lot of this allegory, mystical allegory, you know, the azure dragon, flies into the sky, and all it is it's this movement of you're trying to think of, I need to open up my shoulder joint because I'm going to be doing all these exercises, and it's pivoting around the shoulder joint. So hey, we need to think of these warm-ups and these movements. Why? Again, we talked about the gate theory. In iron palm and iron skills, it's the same thing. We need to make sure that all these things are open so that we can take all that power, kinetic power, as well as inertia and momentum, and express it through a limb, whether it's a hand or a leg or whatever, it doesn't matter. And so what I thought is, let's break this stuff down. Let's get rid of all the junk. Let's get rid of the allegory. It's cool. The names are cool, but what? Again, there's 3 questions. I learned the 3 questions from Dr. John Painter when I was training with him years ago. The 3 questions are, what is the material? Okay. Second is, how do you train the material? And then the third question is, what's the material for? How do you make it work? How do you apply it? He said, if you can't answer any of those questions, one or all, then you're wasting your time. And this, whatever it is, you can apply the 3 questions to anything in life, not just martial arts. And I was like, wow, that has always stuck with me. And I tell people the 3 questions. Who'd you learn from? Dr. Painter. And if you're interested, he still teaches. He's got schools all around the world if you're interested. Again, Bagua, Xingyi, Tai Chi, he does those systems. When I thought about writing, I thought, okay, let's just take away all that silly, all the stories. What is this about? We're trying to train the hands. Why? Because you're going to be either blocking or striking somehow, or grabbing. Okay, so people think, oh, it's just striking. No, we're trying to think of, we need to train the hands to be strong, and not just the hands, because what's the hand attached to? It's attached to a lower arm and an upper arm. You've got these 2 pieces, that attach my hand to my body. So if you're training this, well, you're probably going to be training this as well. And like we mentioned before, these exercises. So I thought, okay, let's show them these exercises. Let's show them the material to open up the joints, open up the shoulders. Because right now, most people, they have horrible stress up here. This is where most people hold their stress. And you've seen people, they've come in to see you, hey, and you're like, whoa. And then after treatment, you're like, yeah, hey, you actually have a shoulder, not, do that, dude. You say, can you touch your, can you pull your shoulders up to your ears and then pull them down? They're like, and they can't even, because it's like metal. And I go, that's not supposed to be metal. That's a muscle, and a muscle should be soft and pliable when needed, and hard, dense, and strong when needed. Okay.
So the book shows the loosening up exercises.
So you got what they call the pre exercise. In other words, people always think iron palm is what? Hitting the bag. Or iron body, you're hitting yourself with a tool yourself. No. That's like 5 or 6 steps down the road. First, we have to warm the body up. So my teacher, a lot of my teachers, I learned iron palm from different teachers, but even Chicoine Sifu, first thing he said is, dude, everybody's stressed out. He goes, I want you to hold your hands up here and I want you to relax. And he goes, imagine your bones are a coat rack. And the tissue and muscles and skin of your body is like this long leather coat, and it's hanging. He goes, I want you to hang the meat off that hook. And I'm like, And so, and he goes, good. He goes, do that for just a minute. He goes, you don't need to do it for an hour, for a day, or a month. He goes, just a minute, just relax. Why? Because you're going to be, my teacher taught me to train twice a day. And everybody goes 3 times. Well, okay. If you're going to train 3 times a day, are you going to bring a stand, whether a wooden stand or a concrete block stand, to work? And you're going to put a bag of something on that stand and you're going to hit that thing? I don't think your coworkers or your boss are going to like what the hell you're doing. So training 3 times a day is it's not applicable to a 21st century person. Okay. Now, if you have that kind of life where you can train 3 times a day, excellent. But my teachers are always like 2 in the morning and then, like early evening or late afternoon is the perfect time to train. Now, in the morning, you just woke up, you don't have 6 pounds of, junk food in your stomach. You should be pretty loose because most people don't wake up, but some do, but you shouldn't be too tight. Or if you are, show them the exercises. Okay. So we show them, move your hands. So we have these cardinal directions. Teach them cardinal directions of movement: up, down, split. Okay. Why? Because again, you need to think of it's a concept we haven't talked about because in the beginning we don't talk about this concept, but it's a concept called compacting. I want to think of when I'm doing these exercises, in the beginning, it's more just movement and opening up the joints, but eventually it's going to become, no, this is a range of motion. And this is the actual route you're going to take when you're, either coming down or coming out or going up. Like everybody fixates on that stand that's horizontal with a bag on it. And I go, that's great. I go, unless you pull somebody down, they're not going to look like that shape. They're standing perpendicular. So how are you going to hit them this way when they're standing this way? You're going to have to learn. Guess what? The intermediate and advanced training, we would actually either hang a bag on the wall or hang it off the ceiling. Why? Because that's how you have to learn. But I haven't taught that yet. That's going to be, that's going to be soon. And I'm actually writing a revision. I'm going to actually put all this information in one book.
Nice. So we'll do the second edition,
We'll do
revised.
the second edition. Why? I want to get this information down again so that people can have it if they want it. And it's not going to be just hand training. We're going to talk about how to train the arms, how to train your fingers, okay, how to train your knuckles, how to train your fists, because it's you got to be careful. Why? Because joints do not like trauma. And the more trauma, the more stress you put on the joint, usually you get swelling, you get arthritis, rheumatism, and you get not optimal. You get the inverse, you get a negative, okay? And people go, oh yeah, when you get old, you're going to have hand issues. And I sit there and go, yeah, I'm almost 60.
So here's an interesting story. I was visited Malaysia on 3 occasions to research martial arts there, and to write a book with one of the who's there. And one of the teachers, Pung Chai Kim, Shaolin Lohan, Don Drager had written a book with him. He has an iron palm method, or he did. And when I went to see him, his hands were so soft like a baby, and the bottom part was like a pillow. I mean, literally a pillow, right? Because he used herbs and all kinds of things, right? Now, he had a disciple who I think now is in charge of the system. It's been over 20 years, so I'm not up on it. But the disciple, when he started learning the iron palm, was like, I don't need the Dit Da Jow, I don't need the Qigong, and he's just banging stuff. And his hands were so gnarly, but the Sifu, so smooth, like nothing had happened to him. But he'd sit there and break bricks and concrete and cinder blocks, no problem.
Coconuts,
yeah.
like
That's your
the
famous
cover. Okay,
picture.
so the cover of the book, the cover of the book,
coconut.
That was a few years ago, and I was still living in Boston, and that was at a Chinese New Year. And one of my Kung Fu brothers, his name is John Tolsma, and John trains in different martial arts with the Nampai, in Boston, with Donald Wong, with Larry Wong, Seafood. It's like great people, Nampai, wonderful people. And he was there, and he was in the front. And I told people, watch out. Why? I said, I got 3 coconuts. I'm going to break the bottom coconut. And when I break it, it's like Gallagher. And the people, yeah, whatever. And I told my friend John, you just action shot it. I don't know how, and I get up, and I'm famous for not doing the cat hairball act that I call, because most people, when they do breaking, they, oh,
right. They put on the show.
and I'm like, okay, I go, hi, I'm Dale. Bam! And I hit this thing. That coconut exploded. It hit everybody in the face with coconut piece. And there's, this is in front of about 350 people. And John goes, dude, look at this. And I'm like, dude, I could not have paid not that John he's incredible, but dude. And I'm like, there we go. That's the picture we got to put up on that book. Why? Nobody's going to believe me. Oh, yeah? There were 350 people. and I had 3 coconuts in a bag, and it's not chi or internal power that you think it is. It's that I can transmit enough power to transfer through solid objects that that last coconut was on that table you see is solid oak. That's like an inch and a half solid oak. It ain't going anywhere. And that coconut has nowhere to go. That kinetic power is entered. It the weakest link is that coconut.
Yeah.
It's not as strong as the oak table, so it's going to break. And people are like, well, I'm like, yeah, it's not mystical mumbo jumbo. It's I can deliver that much of physical power in a short range of motion to cause damage to those things. Now imagine if I hit you in the head with that. You're not going to just kind of, oh yeah, that's nothing. You're probably going to go down and probably not going to get up, because why do we break coconuts? Because they're hard to break. They're very springy. I've had a lot of people hit a coconut and it comes back and bangs their hand, whether they're a palm or a hammer fist, and it puts they get injured because it smashes them in the face. Because the coconut compressed and then sprung back up and it pushed, the limb back in. And people are like, really? I'm like, it happens with wood if it's green. Years ago, I did a science fair project in high school about breaking, and I had pine boards with 1-inch spacers, and if you hit the top board, it Jacob's ladder, all that power just transferred to the next object and broke. Then I had an inch of oak, green oak. Now I couldn't break it. And I had a big football friend, Ron, and he goes, ah! Yeah, it didn't break either. And Ron broke he broke his hand there because live oak, live green oak. In other words, live oak is the kind of wood this is the kind of wood that they made the Constitution out of. Old Ironsides, where cannonballs are fighting, and the cannonballs would bounce off this thing because the wood had all this spring. Yeah, not some exotic hardwood. This is a wood that grows here in the the continental United States, and it's protected now. But man, and you're not going to break it. Why? Because pine is easy. Pine has a grain. It breaks along the grain. So well, even if like an inch thick pine board, if it's green, it might be harder to break, but eventually it will. But oak, oh, dude, if you can break oak, an inch of oak, especially green oak, you are strong. In other words, you can put enough power into that product that it has to, there's no place for that power to go except through it. So Iron Palm is teaching you how to generate that kind of power and train the body and the hands so that you don't injure this when you connect with things, whether it's people or objects.
So some iron palm teachers and iron skills teachers have you thrusting hands into, mung beans and then
Yeah,
into
again,
pellets and then
yeah.
rocks.
So people, you see these movies where
Yeah.
people are driving their fingers. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, why? Because they're trying to give resistance training to all of the structure. Basically, you got to think, if you're going to poke somebody with your hand, okay, well, that's great. But what's my hand attached to? Again, we're talking about these anatomical structures. So that means you got to train everything from that shoulder down, muscular, muscles, and connective tissue and tendons, so that if I encounter resistance, it doesn't vector off or it's not successful. In other words, if I
Or
need to be
break your fingers.
successful,
Hmm.
I'm training this whole structure.
Right.
So what do? Okay, you get a bucket, or you get a huge wok, and you start pushing. It's pushing in the beginning. You're only pushing because it's resistance. So it's a very specific kind of training to train the muscularity and the connective tissues of the entire arm structure. Not, oh, I'm going to beat my fingers until my fingers are numb. No, 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 no. Let me be very honest and upfront. Iron skills training is not about deadening any nerves or causing any damage to anyone or yourself. And if you do, it's not real. It's hooey. It's BS. This stuff has given me strength in my hands. It has helped me by doing these tension exercises. All these exercises that are in the book have helped me get better at being a human. Okay. My needle technique, people go, man, your needle technique is incredible. Why? Because I've actually done this, what we're talking about. Now, how I was taught, you get like a 5-gallon bucket, and you get 2 of them. And the first one, you cut the bottom out and you put it into that second one. So you have a really long, like a 3 or 4 foot long, you want it so that your entire arm can fit into this structure. Okay. So basically I'm trying to make sure that I can extend my arm fully. So whatever that is, you're not You don't want to hit the bottom because you're going to hurt yourself. So you would push. Okay. In the beginning, you're just pushing, but then when that gets easy, you would push and then you would start doing what we call the flapping or the crane. Now, for you, whenever I see you or Russ or anybody who does 5 ancestor fist and I'm like, I start giggling. They're like, what? I go, you don't know what I know, but F around and find out. I would love to see, because you guys, man, all I see is just, I see palms, I see knife. I'm like, lots of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get into the Fuji and crane stuff. There, and again, oh, secret hand stuff you don't see. You think, oh, that's just a hand. No, that's not a hand. That's that's an attack, bro. And not just an attack, but
So
something.
let's say you fill your bucket with like mung beans
Well,
or
now again, people
beans.
say you got these people that say it has to be mung beans. No, it doesn't. What you want is you want something that is not sharp. Don't use garbanzo beans. Chickpeas. Why? They've got a spike on them,
Yeah.
and trust me. But mung beans, why? They're soft. Okay, so if you use mung beans, they're going to break apart. Eventually, it's going to get powdered. There are people out there who tell you to breathe in the dust of your mung beans. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Don't breathe in the dust of anything. You will cause COPD, lung cancer, and other issues. Do not breathe anything but air. You don't want to breathe dust of any kind. So please, once and for all, you need to enclose your material. If it gets dusty, you got to get new material. If you hit a bag and powder comes up, you gotta either change that medium or you got to get a different bag that has a waterproof or it's sealed up. You do not breathe dust. Please, Lord in heaven, I've heard people, oh, my master said, no, you don't breathe mung bean
So
dust for
what's the
health.
best medium then for what you're talking about that doesn't break down as easily?
Well, they all do eventually, but like
Yeah.
black beans, kidney beans, like black-eyed peas break apart easy. Why? They're a small,
Yeah.
they're an easy. But like kidney beans, they're nice and round and soft. They're pretty big. They're gonna last.
Now, what
Okay.
about soaking the beans in herbs before using? Because if essentially what you would be doing is
Yeah.
activating the Jingwell points and others,
Right.
right?
So again, people, what he's talking about is you're talking about the tips of your fingers here. That we've got these acupuncture points. But think about it. There's also a nerve. Our hands are innervated much more than other parts. Our feet, our hands and feet, our faces are innervated much more than say our pectorals and our shoulders. We have nerves here, but we have much more sensory nerves, at the end of our limbs and on the top of our head. So when you're training, okay, by stimulating these points, you should be waking up. Again, it's not about deadening a nerve. It's not about harming your body. And people say, oh, yeah, you'll be able to spear somebody through the head. Really? You really think you're going to be able to stick your fingers through somebody's cranium? What are you? Now, you and I both have seen people. They had that old man. I remember I called him the hot dog master because he looked like he had a hot dog for a finger.
Right.
And he could shred a green coconut with that. And I don't know if he was Silat or I don't remember. I remember he was in the Southeast Asia. He was like Malaysian, Singapore, or
Mm-hmm.
Filipino. But whoa, dude, I would not want that guy putting that into my eye or putting that into my. He could just like pull my face off.
Mm.
Let alone he probably could stick that somewhere in your neck and maybe do some real damage. But is that realistic? No. But having strong fingers that I don't get finger injuries. Why? Because of this training. I don't get hand injuries. Why? Because my hands are very strong. And the tensile strength of these structures has increased. Okay. So by spear training, don't use a small bucket. Don't hit the bottom of a bucket. If you're doing it like this, that's okay. My teachers would always put it so that it was at a
Diagonal.
45 angle because
Yeah.
we're training this natural, this kind of downward. We usually did, it's hard to train in a bucket this high. But this is also, again, this is getting back to if you're training on a table, that horizontal table, yeah, that's not reality. People are not horizontal usually, unless you put them. So unless you're pulling everybody down and hitting them, dude, you're not, again, how do you hit something that it's not there, it's here. So, nobody's ever shown the advanced training in this country. And
Yeah.
Chicoine, when he was alive, told me not to teach anybody. And so I've taught people, hey, you want to get better at iron palm? You got to hang your bag either on the wall or from the ceiling, and you got to learn to hit perpendicular, not horizontal.
Now, in terms of the bag, some people like it with sand packed in hard so it feels like a concrete brick, but you
Right.
need some kind of give or something so you
Yeah.
don't break
So
your bones.
okay. So usually when we had some kind of bag, I don't have a bag. What do I have? Well, I got a hat. I can use my hat. So
Yeah.
if this is your bag, look at where the flame is right here. You don't
Yeah.
want to fill it up to the red part. You want to fill it up to like it's right here so that when it's down, it's got a little bit of space for give. Now, of course, Chicoine, when he taught me, okay, everybody's going to freak out, but we trained with these very special bags that were lined with a waterproof, it was basically, it was like tent. It was either a tent canvas that was canvas on one side with this like nylon or what, it was like polyester, like a waterproof material. Uh, and we would put lead shot.
Lead.
People, what? I go, lead shot. Like I had I gave it to a student of mine because, I've got a smaller bag. I'm not doing as much iron palm training, but I use like a small 10-pound bag, not my, the traditional like 12 by 12, that bag was about 75 pounds of shot. And lead is very dead and lead pulls, it absorbs. So when you do the training from Chicoine, there was no repercussion. Why? The steel compacts and then rebounds. Steel has a tensile strength. Lead, it's just boom, and there's nothing. It absorbs it all. And so that's why he said that's a better medium in the bag, but you got to be careful
But you got to seal it.
because you
Yeah.
got to seal it up. Now, back in the day in the 50s, when he learned this, they would take the lead and they would put it in inner tubes because Chicoine was from Talmadge Falls, Akron, Cleveland,
Mhm.
Firestone, Bridgestone. And the guys would get these huge truck inner tubes. They'd fill it up with the shot, and then they would vulcanize it. They'd seal it and make a rubber bag. Then they would take that and put it into either a leather bag or a canvas bag, seal that up. And, again, you do not want to contact lead. And you do not want that lead to dust. And then you're breathing in lead. What are you, silly?
Same with people put iron shot in, it gets rusty, and then you got, you know,
Again, there's nothing wrong with getting rust on your skin. Why? I actually, you know this. We use rust in some of these injury formulas. Why? Because when the metal is alchemically changed, you've got manganese. You have oxides, and the oxides are what you're looking for. It's not that it's not like we used to put nails. We put them in a cup. We pour vinegar in. We'd leave that out for like 3 months. They get all corroded and nasty because carbon steel nails in acid. Then the teacher would take the nails and scrape them off with like a, something, like you see people do on with fire starters, with a ferro
right.
rod, they're making sparks. They're scraping the oxide, the rust. They're scraping that off the nail and then putting that rust into the solution of Dit Da Jow. Now I don't use this anymore. Why? Because I use copper pyrite and then I use something called Wu Ming Yi. Wu Ming Yi is pyrolusite, and it's kind of a manganese, and so I don't have to do rust. I can get something similar, So in other words, it's time. I can get something where I can put it in the solution now versus I got to wait 3 months to let those nails corrode. It's not time, it's not worth it. It's not worth the wait. It's like I get something now. And so I use a little bit of pyrolusite and copper pyrite, and I get the same thing. I get those, you know, something in those oxides, just manganese and magnesium. And we know this. Why? Magnesium. We that's the first thing we lose when we sweat, and it's the last thing we supplement. I use magnesium oil. I don't take it internally. That just makes you poop. Transdermally, much better. But anyway, looking at, you know, okay, you're gonna train those fingers. Well, guess what? It's training that arm. So in the book, we show you exercises to not only warm up, but to strengthen everything from the shoulder down to the fingers. Okay. We show you all these exercises to help reduce your stress levels, to get rid of residual tension. Why? These are things that are bad for you. Iron palm training will make you faster. And people go, what? I go, if you do iron palm training as taught by me, you will get not only a strength increase, but a flexibility and speed. Why? Because you have less tension in your body. Again, you can make fun of me. Oh, look, he moves like, he moves like a squid. Yeah, okay, but why can't you do that? Why don't you have that? Most people do it. You hear pop, 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 crack, 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 because they don't move. So their body is like, well, wait a minute, how come you're all cracky? I go, because that shows you you're not moving. You've been stationary for too long. Most of us are old. We get up, crack, 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 crack. Okay, yeah, ready to go. Where's the coffee?
So if you're not using lead and you're not, so what is a good medium that beginners can use in their iron palm bags or bags that they make that will have a good resistance but not
So
form some kind of a powder that they're going to breathe in if they don't
eventually
know
they're
how
all
to
going to
seal?
powder. I mean, they're all going to powder. So I mean, that's just it's just a question of time. But usually I say, hey, look at your hand strength before you start the training. If you've got really strong hands, you can start on either gravel, like smooth little pebbles. Don't put sharp rocks in.
Right.
Usually they call it pea gravel, like it's been washed. I don't like sand. Why? Sand compacts and becomes solid. You have to be careful. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it. But if you don't understand it, you can hit it too hard and cause problems because it almost becomes a
It's
solid
like
bag.
concrete. It's hard.
Like
Yeah.
my lead shot bags that I learned on. They're very solid. And people would come over to my house and they would go, "Oh, I love your bag." And I'm like, and I would jump on them because they're pulling their hand back. They think they're gonna hit this thing like it's a beanbag. And I'm like, no, and I knock them down. Don't do that. Because I've had people hit the bag so hard and then something broke. And
Yeah.
I had a guy, his radius popped out of his arm.
Wow.
He hit, dude, he hit my bag like it was a beanbag. This isn't a beanbag, dude. That's almost 8 pounds of lead. And it doesn't give. Boom. Ah, I'm like, no, that's on you, bro. But after that, everybody would try to go to hit the bag, and I'd be like, no, don't do that. And then I put the bag away because I'm like, come on, man, don't. That's just silly. You're gonna hurt yourself. But don't use sand. Or if you do, just understand again what it can do. So I like beans. Somebody who has no hand strength, who can't close a gripper very well. Okay, I'm going to start you off on some kind of bean, kidney bean, black bean, and then within 3 months, hey, can you close that gripper? Why? I use grippers, hand grippers. If you can close like a level one captains of crush, you got some. That's pretty good. Most people they have to start with like a trainer,
Right.
you know. So I usually say, here, grab my hands, squeeze as hard as you can, and if you can make me go, well, that's a good one. Let's start you off on rocks. And if you're like a mechanic, or if you come in and you're a martial artist already, and you can start on steel or iron. Why? Because you've been doing things, especially karate people. Because karate people,
Right.
a lot of them have trained their fists. They haven't trained, the palm as much usually, but
Right.
usually karate people, they've got
The
they've got fists,
makiwara.
they've got a hammer
Mhm.
fist, and chop. Sometimes they train fingers, but and yeah, don't train your fingers on a makiwara. That's just stupid. Pushing, yeah, yeah. Using the makiwara is like isometric, isotonic. Oh hell yeah, doing push-ups on your hands. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's another way of, but you don't need to do that if you don't like it. I don't like fingertip push-ups.
Do you recommend people um, purchase herbs from you or from somewhere to soak their beans in when
If
they're
you want,
doing?
a lot of people they'll put some, herbs in, but again, that gets more into that powdered thing where
It starts powdering, right?
again, it's powder that it's going to come out. I'm like, yeah, not
And I think soaking kidney beans in an herbal liquid would also make them softer and break apart
right.
faster.
So I'm
Right,
just like, no, it's that to me, no, I don't want to do anything to the bean. Now, of
right.
course, when you're sticking your no,
But you could jowl your fingers
so again,
rather than the
when you're
bean.
training those fingers, some people do put herbs in the beans. Okay,
Hmm.
not wet herbs, but they actually put they take some of the Honghua safflower powder, they'll put safflower powder, or they'll put sanshi powder, just a little bit. Because again, you don't want to be breathing it, but they're thinking with your sweat and with you're gonna, of course, anytime we train in Chinese martial arts and iron skills, you're gonna put the medicine on before you train, in the middle of your training, and after. It's not just once, it's usually 3 times: before, during, and after. Okay. So if you put Jiao on and you're going to train, even if you're training your fingers and you're not hitting a hard thing, even that resistance training with the beans, I'm going to put liniment on. Why? I want to make sure that I get everything to that arm, you know, all that blood, all that oxygen. Okay. So by putting a little bit of powdered herb in those beans, or some people use sand, you got to be careful. Sand's very abrasive. Okay. but they'll put, and why? Your sweat, the Dit Da Jow you put on those powder, you're gonna get a little bit of this coating on your arm, and that's good. Why? You're absorbing these, medicinal, the medicinal herbs, but not so much that again you get dust or you get clouds of material where you're breathing it in. Nope. I tell people, make sure that you've got good ventilation. You want to breathe in fresh air. You don't want to be breathing, don't keep it in the basement, in a dingy, musty basement. Make sure you got fresh air. No, you don't want drafts. All my teachers would be very, very, they're like, be careful if the wind is blowing too much. Why?
Yeah.
Because if you're
Enters the
sweating and you're
pores.
training, your pores are open, you're going to get evil chi. They talked about evil chi or evil wind.
Right.
They're basically talking about a pathogen. You're getting invaded by something. You're catching a cold, you're on the flu, whatever. You're being attacked basically by some kind of, something, a virus or a bacteria.
So this is a good segue into a topic, which
Yeah.
is, and it's just like you said just now, when in TCM we talk about, liver chi stagnation and liver wind or evil pathogens. These
Yeah.
are all metaphors and old words, from another culture used to describe things that we can use just normal words, scientific words, medical words here in the West for, right? So when there's a lot of martial artists who are fighting back against the quote unquote woo in the martial arts and getting rid of it, but a lot of it is, for me, I don't like evangelicals. So what I mean is anybody's trying to force their religion, their martial art, their belief system, their ideology, their favorite food, their favorite actor on me, their favorite music. I don't want to talk to them because they don't want to hear anything and you can't tell them otherwise.
Right.
So a lot of the guys that I see on the internet and who email me personally and say, why'd you let this guy talk about this? It's the woo, and we got to fight against the woo, and we got to fight against religious belief and this and that. And really, it's a problem with the people who are fighting against it don't really spend the time to understand what it is. So when we talk about chi or evil wind in the body, it's not a wind blowing through your body.
Yeah. I tell
Right.
people, I don't like the metaphors that have been used to describe both martial arts and,
Right.
the medicinal systems we've studied. It's like, really? No. Because people say, well, what's chi? I go, look, that's a big question. And that's like dinner and drinks and cigars, guys. I mean, seriously, we're not talking, this is not something I can give you in a 1-minute elevator speech. I can give you I can say, look, chi is the intrinsic energy in our bodies. Now, that's about as quick and condensed. Why? Because, dude, that's a huge, we can break that apart. It's not an easy conversation. Why?
It's like, what's
Because depending who we're
consciousness?
talking, who are we talking about?
It's huge. Yeah.
People don't understand that the Chinese acupuncture books were translated by an European banker who was a polyglot who had no idea of medicine, meridians and pathways. No, nerve points and in a neural pathway. This is not a magical energy point. There's a nerve here that I'm stimulating that then piggybacks up into a nerve up here that then tells the brain, hello, you got a problem. And then the brain goes, oh, I know what you need. And the brain gives the body what it needs.
Right.
So I'm not doing anything. I'm just like a mechanic. I'm just tuning your engine, either to go up or down or what. I'm trying to, if you're running too high, okay, let's bring that down. You're not running, okay, let's bring that up. You're too hot, let's cool you off. You're wet, let's dry you off. Oh, you're dry, let's lubricate. We're always trying to get back into this baseline. What's the baseline? Okay. So when we're talking iron skills, we have to take a baseline. I have to look at a student and go, hey, do you have strong hands? Or, do you play an instrument? Nothing like that. Okay, we're going to start you off with more exercises and less trauma in the beginning. But if you come to me and you're a bricklayer, dude, you don't even need my training. I got mason friends that use their hands and break bricks off with their freaking fingers. I'm like, dude, you need to talk to my Eagle Claw friends.
Yeah.
Because you got Eagle Claw like there's no tomorrow. I've seen mason friends just or with a trowel. A trowel is a piece of sheet metal. Ting, and cut a brick with a my friend's grandfather, he's cutting bricks with a freaking with a trowel. I'm like, what? And the old man's laughing, going, you can't do that. I'm like, hell no, I can break a brick with my hand, but I can't. I try that and I break the trowel. What the? Again, somebody learned a skill and they've honed it and they've created it so that, boom, he can do it 10 times out of 10. He can do it. What? because he knows how to do it. He's learned how. Again, remember the 3 questions. What is it? How do I train it? What's it for? He's figured that out. I haven't. Why? Because I can't do it. Okay. So let's look at, look at the baseline. Do you have strong hands? If not, you need to make these stronger before you start, throwing them into a bag full of anything, whether it's flour. Some people say flour. Why? That's crazy. You put flour into a canvas bag, it's going to come out.
Right.
Don't use flour. Some people use rice. Rice is good too. Why? Eventually it's going to powder. It's cheap. Most of the time, like, we would use them in what we call a grab bag. You'd make a little, like a 6x6, and we fill those with rice, and we would throw them and catch them and squeeze them, because,
Right.
and then they get bigger and bigger. Some systems you got 20, 30 pounds, and you're throwing a 20-pound bag across the hall at somebody, and they gotta catch it. And if they don't, well, it usually puts them on their butt, and that teaches them, hey, you better catch that bag. So baseline, what's your hand strength? And I always tell people, by the end of a year, your hand strength is going to be double or triple what it was now. And I've had little small women, my ex-wife, she's barely, and dude, she got to the point where she could close a number 2 gripper. I mean, she's this tiny little thing. Okay. So again, it's not about how many bricks you can break. It's, how strong is this anatomical structure?
And all of this material, the foundation of it, the foundational material is in your book,
It's in the book.
Fundamental Iron
So
Skills, which is available on
from the
Amazon.
beginning. So, and
Yeah.
I talk about other things, but again, what I'm doing is in the revision is like, look,
Yeah.
let's look at the hand training, but then say, okay, let's bring in the, because the exercises are done a specific way in the beginning. Why? You have to develop the body.
Right.
So it's opening, relaxing, but also training these muscles so that when I start doing these motions, I don't hurt myself. I've actually learned how that, how does that move through space, and how does that, how can I do that? Some people do that and they pull something. Oh, ow. Okay. We got to work on that. That means your shoulder, and every dude, 9 times out of 10, I got to give them shoulder exercises. Why? People hold their tension up here. Like from the diaphragm up is like 80% of the population. Then you got people like me. I don't hold my tension up here. I hold my tension in my calves. So my feet get sleepy. Like, in other words, they fall asleep, and I'm like, oh, and then I realize I reach down and my calves are like concrete. Ah, I have
Yeah.
to, so then I massage my calves, whereas, over in Asia, you see everybody, doing up here because that's where they're holding it. Everybody holds it in a different place. But most of the time, it's either the traps or lower. I've never had anybody come in going, I hold my tension in my butt.
Yeah.
The middle, not in the middle. Like, no, they don't say, oh, I hold the tension in my guts. It's always either up here or, lower.
So with all these decades of training, different martial arts, Okinawan, Chinese, Indonesian, Japanese,
Right.
having lived overseas, American teachers, Asian teachers, Chinese medicine, what is Dale Dugas's philosophy for living?
Well, first and foremost, we need to get up and move. Why? If you don't get up and move, you're going to die. Now, of
Yeah.
course, we're all going to die, but if you don't get up and move, you're going to die much sooner than if you do get up and move. So basically, you need to move, you need to breathe more, and you need to relax. How do you relax? You need to find something you enjoy that gives you joy. This concept of happiness and joy. When I first started learning martial arts, I had a lot of teachers who weren't, they didn't speak English as their first language. English was, a second or a third. And so when they taught us, they would explain things in a certain way. And sometimes it was hard for me to figure out, but then eventually I figured it out over time. Is like, oh, and first and foremost was you need to play. My teachers would say, I play martial arts, and I'd get mad. When I lived in Japan, my first time, it was 1987. It was my junior year abroad. I'm living in Morioka, Japan, in Iwate. And I met this man. He goes, oh, you play martial arts. Oh, bujutsu yarimasu ka? And I'm like, yaru? I'm like, yaru janaka, benkyo shiteru. I said, I'm not playing anything. I'm studying. And the old man kind of looked at me funny. So in Asia, they don't say you study martial arts. They
Right.
usually say you play.
I say
Look at
play your
Indonesians.
form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in Indonesia, they talk about Pencak Silat. Pencak talks about the movement, the dance. The Silat is the, is the application and the fighting. So you have to have both this dance or flow with your combat. And if you don't, in Indonesia, they say, if you're not flowy, you're not good. He goes, anybody can, that stiff ass shit we see, you know, I'm not going to disparage Korean karate, but usually, Taekwondo, Shotokan, just linear, hard, punch, punch, punch. Okay, that's great for a certain level, but what if somebody trips you and puts you on the ground? I lived in Japan for a period of years. You didn't think I learned judo and jujitsu? Of course I did. But I don't study those systems anymore. But I studied them when I was there. Why? I had an opportunity and they were there. But again, looking at different teachers, different personalities, people think your teachers are supposed to be nice. My teachers were not nice to me. They said, you're going to learn to bleed, sweat, and cry in here so that you're not going to bleed, sweat, or cry out there. Do you understand? And I'm like, I think I do. And then, yeah. In other words, we're going to train in a manner, in a progressive manner, to get to the point where you're going to be able to deal with whatever's outside and you're not going to worry about it. But it's not going to be fun. And people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, some of my training wasn't fun, but it wasn't beginner training. It was always advanced. You're getting into the real nitty gritty. This stuff's getting real. You know this better than I. Why? Because in Filipino systems, you're learning the weapons first. Well, for me, I think of how I was taught through the martial art magazines and stuff is, yeah, Filipino arts, you're learning a stick first, and then you're learning the empty stuff. So sticks and knives and swords first, whereas in other systems, you're doing all the empty hand stuff, and then the blades and the weapons are always advanced. And I always liked that. I thought, that makes more sense to me. But again, looking at all this stuff, again, we're talking about progressive training. Life. My life, I look at life as one day at a time, one step at a time. I'm not just somebody who likes to spout off on this stuff. I use this stuff. I'm using this medicine. Why? I have an issue. I have a serious health issue. Now, is that going to make me sit in the corner and cry all the time? No. You know what makes me happy is early this morning I got up and I practiced my Silat, and then I hit my hand a little. I played with my grab bag. I went and I saw my parents, my elderly parents who live 10 minutes away. Check in on them. And I come home, hey, and I get to talk to my friend Mark here, and I get to talk about things that I love to do. I love the martial arts. I love the medicine. Remember, I'm not totally anti-big pharma. I'm not totally anti-Western medicine. If you need something and you need emergency medicine, I'm not going to give you a treatment with a needle. I'm going to send you to the hospital. Okay? This is because the training. My training, it's not just training for the martial arts, it's training for life. Progressive training, but also progressive life. Again, breathe, smile, you know, tell your loved ones you love them, you know. Trust me, man. I had an older brother who I didn't talk to for years, and we got back together, and then he died like a year later. So, but thank God that I got back with him, and we mended that bridge. I didn't talk to him for about 10 years. He was my older brother, and we shared the same birthday. We were born on the same day, 3 years apart. So, you know, so again, I tell people, again, life is short. If you want to do something, go do it. You know?
Well, I'd like to thank you very much, Dr.
Oh,
Dale
please,
Dugas, old friend and brother,
please, man. I remember, I
for
think
coming out and hanging
the
out with me
first,
today.
right? It's always a pleasure, man. Again, what can I do? How can I help you? If I can't help you, I probably know somebody that can. So please let
Yeah.
me know what I can do, for you, for the company, for anybody, anybody's watching these videos that you're putting out. We're here to give you all these different views, like you were talking about. Some people are into the woo or the shishi stuff, and I'm like, look, there's nothing wrong with those people doing that. Why are you having such a hard time about it? Let them. This is what makes them happy. Let them be happy.
Life
As
is
long as you're
short.
not, harming people or selling children, I'm good.
Yeah.
It's great to see. Why? Again, I look at the thumbnails I see on your videos, man, and you see these people, and There we go. And,
Yeah.
and we see your smiling face, and we see other people smiling again, dude. The smiles, and I'm like, you need to smile more. Trust me, I'm telling you to smile more.
Yeah. Life is short, no matter how you
Come
slice
on,
it.
let's laugh. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
you can go on the other side and go all Sith, and no, but that's not going to help you. That's only going to hinder you. I don't want to hinder myself or other people. I want them to be free. I want them, again, why do we teach these things? Because it's going to give you a sense of freedom. What do you mean? I go, look, to be able to walk around knowing that you can defend yourself at any time with just your bare body. Okay, that's a wonderful feeling to know you can handle yourself. You can take care of yourself on a certain level. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you and all that you're doing to try to, again, help people on all these different levels, man. It's wonderful to see, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thanks, brother. Me too. Glad to know you. And we'll put all your contact info and the link for your book and everything in the show notes.
Excellent.
And I'll send you the link when we're ready. Enjoy your day, and I'll talk soon.
Talk to you soon, man. Take care.
Take care.
Bye bye.